I want Begley Senior.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh man, I'd love to do 12 Angry Men one of these days.
You've never done that on your show?
No, surprisingly.
That is kind of surprising. It was an answer on a Jeopardy calendar that I saw recently. It was like a quote about musicals, or I guess stage plays, and it was like, I'm changing my thing to guilty, and I was like, I've never even seen 12.
Oh yeah,
and I know what this is.
Number
from.
6 says or something.
Yeah, it's like, what could this be from? Like all of one thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. God, speaking.
Find Me Guilty.
Yeah, right. Oh,
right.
Man.
Which actually, I do like that movie.
Find Me Guilty wasn't terrible, but Vin Diesel was not good in it.
I thought he was great.
He was kind of miscast. Come on.
Oh, I was totally into it.
He was miscast, but it was fun. I mean, it's fun. At least it's fun.
It is very fun, but not miscast. I like Vin Diesel.
I like Vin Diesel a lot.
I like Vin Diesel when he's not being asked to do very much. Saying one line over and over. I've never seen the Fast and Furious movies.
You mean the word family?
No.
That's what you like him to say?
No, I was talking about I Am Groot, but you could, that's the other. See, that's the thing. I don't have any frame of reference for Fast and Furious, because I've only seen the one where somebody is fighting somebody else with like giant wrenches that look like they're like lightsaber dueling with like giant wrenches on top of a car, or on top of a parking garage, I think.
I think it's one of the more recent ones.
Yeah, I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's in it. So.
I like them, but I
movies, not me.
For me, like 5 is the best, and I think
5 was pretty good.
1 through 5 I think hold up really well in general. I've seen them all multiple times. 2 grows on me with every viewing. Actually, is
that the one with Tyrese? Is that the
one I
Tyrese?
think that's the one. I think that's the one where he's introduced.
Is that Tokyo Drift? Is 2?
That's 3.
That's 3. Okay,
which I
don't
love.
think I've
that
ever
one.
seen Tokyo Drift.
That's a really good one. It's very Rebel Without a Cause.
I've never even seen the original. I think the only one I've seen is that like much later one.
If you've seen Point Break, you've seen the first Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
I have not seen Point Break either. So,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah.
You're not really missing much other than a really good Busey performance.
Isn't he kind of playing his character from Predator 2?
Gosh, I don't think so.
Like a dickhead agent.
Kind of, yeah.
I know is the thing that they always talk about in Hot Fuzz with the
right.
He can't shoot. That's the only other thing I know about. Speaking of not any of those kinds of movies. Speaking of not even the kind of movie that we talked about last week. This is, a complete 180. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about not the film that Cullen thought, which is a story for the beginning of this show.
Oh, boy.
The next film in the Mike White March experience, An Autumn's Tale, a Chow Yun-Fat experience, or film.
I don't know what you're talking about. What?
球手、二球手、三球手，跟住撲街！咩事啊？
我23歲㗎啦。
咁咪好啦，花樣年華，我3張3啦。
你唔明㗎啦，女人23，老過男人33㗎。
戇居。
我今日靚唔靚啊？值幾多分啊？
女人真係茶煲。
你話咩茶煲話？
麻煩啊，叉煲，你唔識英文嘅咩？睇下你個猛憎樣啊！而家成條街最醜樣係你啊！
你仲有落井下石，人哋而家咁傷心，你都唔安慰下？
你咁就要傷心啊？唔靚就要傷心，咁我咪跳海死咗佢？
你自己好好咩？日倒夜倒，有口話人，冇口話自己，你咪知嘅難話，你係我邊個啊？
好，我咩都唔係，我以後都唔會再理你，你亦都唔好查煲我，我呢一世人咩都冇，淨係剩翻啲自尊你啊！
我諗佢中意咗我啊，同佢喺一齊，我覺得一啲拘束都冇。但係有一種男人，你會好中意同佢喺埋一齊，不過要你嫁俾佢，你又唔會。佢已經30幾歲人啦，呢次只係初戀，咁你想做咩啊？
呢？我希望有日能夠喺度開翻間餐館仔，門口對住大西洋。我諗嗰陣時啲 friend 都走晒，剩翻我一人，或者連你都走埋啦。
This time, folks, he's in it. This time, he's here. Yeah, so, Mike, why An Autumn's Tale? What drew you to this one? Or had you seen this one before? I know you said in the last episode, some of these I haven't seen.
Yeah, well, Piggy, I never saw this one. And I'm really glad that I chose this. I knew that he was in some romantic films as well as, you know, the comedies and the action films. And I knew this was supposed to be kind of a romantic film. And man, I was very surprised and very pleased by it.
So, Cullen, tell me about Autumn Tale, the 1998 French film that you and I somehow got the wires crossed on. Please tell me you did not watch it.
I mean, I've seen that before. I mean,
okay.
it's an Eric Romer movie, so like I adore Romer. So when I saw that in the invite, Autumn Tale, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to watch Romer. This is great. I've seen it. I've seen like 25 of this guy's movies. Like, I'm prepared. And I'm glad I checked not only so I watched the correct movie, but oh my God, I absolutely loved this. I watched it 3 times and I just told Lauren, like, I'm ready to watch it again.
Oh, wow.
This immediately shot into my pantheon of best New York movies. And last night we also watched Just Another Girl on the IRT, which that was my first viewing of that. And that is also up there with like best New York movies.
I kind of figured this was going to be in your wheelhouse, Cullen, because it has a lot of the things I think about when I think about the movies that I know you're into, and and also I say the same thing. I would say the same thing to you, Mike. This movie, in my opinion, clearly would resonate, and it does resonate with me. I enjoyed it. It's not at all the kind of movie I would normally watch. Like I'm not a huge romantic comedy or romantic drama film viewer, film enjoyer, but the Chow Yun-Fat's performance is so good, it kind of doesn't matter. It's so good that nothing else matters in the movie. I mean, his back and forth with Cherie Chung is good, but you're here for Chow Yun-Fat's performance, and it's a really endearing performance in a way that, again, if you're an American audience goer and all you've seen Chow Yun-Fat in is the two things I had seen him in, which are not good indicators of much of anything, this is a pretty interesting role to see him in as Figurehead. What a great name. Or Figgy, which is also happens to be the name I call my cat, which was really funny watching it just showing up on screen a bunch of times. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Or I don't know how your guys' subtitles were, but mine kept screwing up and he was Piggy through half of it.
Oh.
I did see that from time to time, and that's funny. So Cullen mentioned that he couldn't get the subtitles to work. I got the subtitles to work on mine, but I did notice the thing where they called him Piggy. I thought that was maybe intentional because his name is Pang.
I'm thinking that because the F and the P look so similar that maybe there was like I don't know, some sort of like OCR screw up or something, but
it wasn't English. Like the subtitles
no,
not English. They
were good subtitles. Yeah.
I don't think I didn't see him called Piggy in mine. It also just might be my glasses. The prescription's not very good, but I did get the subtitles to work, and so and I did actually watch two different versions of the subtitles.
Oh my!
And the translation was a little different. Nothing huge, but some of the jokes and like puns on like the names of the characters were better in one than the other.
But again, this movie's not. It's not the issue we had with the last movie, The Seventh Curse, where it was legitimately English in a lot of the spots, which is so again, we didn't expect anything less. But so this.
What do you mean by that?
It was not. English is how do you explain that? Like
just really poorly translated English. Yeah, it's like. You always go back to the line from City on Fire, like, why you pointy gun at boss, like those kind of.
Yeah, or the thing from Ricky. Oh, Ricky, you are our hopes and our dreams. Like, just like, they have a bunch of them for the Star Wars movies. Those are the ones that are like real primo, funny, like real bad translations. Right. From like was it the sequel, the prequel trilogy, I think had some really funny like translations. It's just bad translation.
Okay, so it's like someone who's not like a native speaker or someone who's like fluent. Right.
It would seem to be like they translate the dialogue to English, I guess.
Like Google Translate.
Take the English to Cantonese and then Cantonese back to English for the subtitles.
When it comes to the Phantom Menace one, and I can't remember what that one was called, like something in the West, but that one seems like it was translated from English to something else back to English, whereas with the original Hong Kong films, like there was a mandate, a British mandate, where everything had to be subtitled in English. So it was the characters so that people who spoke Mandarin could read it, because it's written the same way whether you're in Cantonese or Mandarin. So you've got the simplified Chinese characters, and then underneath it was the translation of the script. And so a lot of people that were writing those subtitles weren't 100% fluent, even though Hong Kong was a British colony at the time. But that's where that real English stuff came in, and a lot of times too, to be perfectly honest, the script might refer to things that were in the original script that weren't shot. So you're watching, it's kind of like when you would watch, and I don't know if you've ever done this, Chris, but if you go back and you watch the X-Files with the subtitles on, there are a lot of times where the dialogue has changed. So the captions aren't the same, or they might be referring to a song that they weren't able to get rights to. So the lyrics are 100% wrong. So you get a lot of like weird things. And then, it's like very like, these guys are speaking in in the Hong Kong films, they're talking a mile a minute. And then the subtitle might be like, go now, like when I was in China, I watched A Better Tomorrow, subtitled, and it was like the old film print, and there's one part where a guy says like I will, but instead of saying I will, they shortened it to I''LL, so I'll, and I'm like,
whoa,
that totally changes the meaning.
What?
I'll, yeah, I'll.
You sure will.
Sure. I give a brief plug to your episode of Better Tomorrow, Mike, because that's where I first learned about a lot of the the stuff you're talking about how they had to have the subtitles in English and Mandarin. That episode might be my favorite of Projection Booth.
Well, thank you.
It's a great one. So anyone who's listening who hasn't heard that yet,
your compression, Mike, and it would be 5 stars.
Yeah, one of these days, just withhold that star until I can figure that thing out. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Can I just get this on 180 gram vinyl and listen to it?
Yeah, right.
There you go.
We're pressing our podcast onto vinyl here at Culture Cat. Christ Almighty! Actually, Mike, let's press your Conan the Barbarian show onto vinyl.
Oh, how many volumes would that be?
Oh my God!
Right,
it's a great episode too.
7 hours worth of vinyl. Just like fucking like a tome of vinyl that you just like turn these sheafs of paper and it's just giant vinyls lodged in there. God.
My wife was very amused by this film because of Cherie Chung's name being Jennifer in it. And she's just like, oh my God, another Jenny movie? Because she still goes back to how many times Chow Yun-Fat was screaming Jenny in The Killer.
Forgot about that.
Right? I know she's been in a ton of stuff and I've probably seen her in a bunch of stuff, but nothing was just like, oh yeah, that's the girl from this. But she gave a really solid performance because she's the protagonist, no matter how much Chow Yun-Fat is in the film, he's second banana, but he's a great second banana. And so much of the movie depends on him moving things forward because she is content to just be a jerk a lot of times. And he helps move her. I mean, she has this, comes to America thinking that she's going to be there with her boyfriend, Vincent. And when she goes to pick him up from the train station, he's there with this floozy, maybe not a floozy, but Peggy. And she is just crushed. And so it's up to Chow Yun-Fat to kind of cheer her up and keep her on the right and steady. And I don't think she commits suicide, but she's just super depressed and doesn't even care at one point when the gas goes out. And so he saves her life.
Yeah, the thing that most people have probably never heard of, gas refrigerator.
Well, it's the gas refrigerator, and he makes a big deal about the gas refrigerator, and she leaves the refrigerator door open. I was like, oh man, he talked about that gas refrigerator, but then it's the stove, right?
Yeah. The water goes down and turns off the pilot light.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, why did we talk about this refrigerator so much?
And they taped the refrigerator up and everything. I mean,
and I'm like, you guys couldn't open the windows. You had to break the windows. But
very dramatic slow motion.
Oh yeah,
I can imagine that those windows would not actually open.
That's true.
New York, that apartment building. I bet that paint is, this shit is just, it's fastened. It's not moving anywhere. So. Yeah.
But how good did that roast duck fried rice look?
Oh my God, that looked amazing.
Real question. Compared to that fucking egg sandwich.
I mean, that egg sandwich also looked kind of good, man.
I would have been about that egg sandwich, yeah.
Maybe
especially served in
on that bad boy.
New York deli. Yeah. I'm all about it.
But I'll take that fried rice because that just looks like a greasy spoon. Little place got egg sandwiches, roast. Get some of that roast duck fried rice. Let's just end this show and go get roast duck fried rice. We'll be back. It's fun though. The fun thing about this movie, that like you mentioned, Cullen, at the beginning, this movie really does have New York as a character. And that's, I mean, you say that a lot. We always say, oh, you know, Los Angeles is a character in this movie, or Chicago plays a big part in this movie. In this movie, New York is a huge character because it is a fish out of water story in a lot of ways. It's a very traditional, almost, you know, boilerplate fish out of water story. In a lot of ways. I'm not saying there's nothing unique about this movie, but this movie is trying to tell a story about a character that you've seen before. It's just the performances are really good, and the chemistry between the main characters is so good that that's what carries an otherwise kind of generic plot. But man, New York of the 90s is just like the late 80s, early 90s. Like,
yeah, this would have been shot like in 86.
But yeah, you know, it's like that time. I love that time in New York. I love the look. I really do. It's such a specific look of that time. It really is.
Yeah. Well, plus, I mean, I know this was, you know, way before the gentrification, way before the Disneyfication of Times Square, but it felt like some of it was played up a little. Like,
oh my God, yeah.
You know, like, especially all the homeless people, just like so many, all right in a row. The guy pissing on the side of the building. I know that happened, right? But it just felt like a little much.
Didn't feel that way to me.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I feel like I've seen people pissing and shitting recently. I mean, it's just like it happens a lot less now, but it's still
we're back.
There's still a bad homeless problem.
Yeah. People pissing on the stairs.
Pre-COVID times, brother. They're back to shitting on the ground, dude. No mask and everything, just taking a fat dump right in an alley somewhere. God.
Trying to remember what the next line is from that. Broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the stairs. You know, they just don't care.
So Mike, since we are now talking about Chow Yun-Fat in a movie more than last time, what did you think of him in this film? Had you seen this kind of role from him before?
I've seen him play dramatic, though I'd be hard pressed to tell you where I've seen him play dramatic. I've more seen him play action guy or comedy guy. Right. And sometimes the comedy doesn't work for me. Like, I almost picked God of Gamblers for this month, but when we talk about A Better Tomorrow 2, there's one character in there who just annoys the shit out of me. And basically Chow is playing a very similar character. Like, when you give somebody amnesia or some sort of mental deficiency in a Hong Kong film, sometimes they will play it to the fucking hilt. And that's where Chow is at through a lot of God of Gamblers. If memory serves, it's been a long time, but sure. When I looked at it, I was just like, oh, I don't want to go there. But man, it's seeing him as this dashing leading man. And I like too that he's really flawed. This whole thing of him gambling, and he doesn't really have he's got the restaurant job, but it feels like he's got the dreams of being bigger, and he needs her to help push him into the bigger dreams. I love his whole thing where he's writing on the mirror of all the things that he wants to do. I was just like, wow, I love this guy. And I was so enthralled by him. He's so charismatic. It's just, you can't take your eyes off of him when he's on screen.
Yeah, I agree. He really carries a lot of the film's. The emotional weight of the film is really split between the two leads. But unlike Cherie Chung's character, I feel like Chow Yun-Fat just has a harder hill to climb because he's not in the movie as much as her. Mm-hmm. So because he's not the main character. And also, he, like you kind of mentioned already, Mike, having seen him in more comedic or action, I would say he's kind of comedic in this movie too, right? He's kind of the comedic character in the drama. So he's a little serious, but he's still, I would say, the funniest character in the movie, right?
Yeah, he doesn't, I mean, it's not laugh out loud for me very often, other than I think when he is hanging around while the ex-boyfriend and her are having lunch, and he's like vacuuming, whistling underneath their feet and stuff, and just his little comments and stuff. There are a lot of really good little moments like that, but this movie was a lot more serious than I thought it would be. And plus, there were a lot of times where I didn't know where it was going to go. Like when he ends up getting in a fight towards the end of the film, like, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought something really bad was going to happen at that point.
Yeah, I did too. I was kind of set up for that. I was like, is this movie gonna have like he dies?
Right.
Right? I'm glad we were on the same page. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I was expecting. Like I was expecting him to die.
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't know what to expect at all, to be perfectly honest. So that didn't feel. I didn't know if that was outside of the realm of possibility. Clearly,
Right.
you didn't either, Mike. So
Because he's at his lowest point at that point.
right,
You know, it's
So,
like,
what's not to say? That's in these kinds of movies. But it's like that. It's like the valley of the movie, the worst moment of the character's life. That's what I was expecting.
well, what interests me about Chow Yun-Fat in this movie is he is really low, and he has these moments where he's like, "Oh yeah, money's just for spending. I'm not going to save anything," and he's sort of talking about these dreams. In his dream of building this restaurant, kind of like on the Jersey Shore, is just like, "Oh yeah, all my friends will be gone by then," and he's like, "I won't need to gamble because I'll be my own boss. I don't need any balance." And this like referring to his gambling addiction as like it's necessary for him to balance his life in order to basically just get rid of all of his money and have like nothing.
Yeah.
Like there is something kind of like weirdly self-destructive about him.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend my last dollar the day I die. Like,
right.
fuck you. Like, geez, dude. Yeah, that's very. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of this is a kind of weird reference. The main character from The Stranger, the Albert Camus, I guess, where it's like I don't live for the future or the past. I live for the now, and it's like I live for the now. I don't care about anything else. And like you can't understand my lack of ambition because I live in the now. I only care about the now. And like he's kind of got that weird feel to him where he's just, like you said, Cullen. He's like he just super self-destructive. It could be viewed as self-destructive, and in a lot of ways it is self-destructive. But it's an interesting character to put in this kind of movie because again, it's a different take on this kind of character because you could see him being written very like he's just the jealous guy who wants the girl that's not giving him the time of day, and that's not where they go with this character at all.
His background is also interesting because he has that Master of Science from Syracuse University, and he spent all these years at sea.
Right.
So he seems to have his foot in a couple things. It's just like, well, he could have gone a more traditional like academic route, and then he's like, well, then he kind of became this like itinerant, doing more like manual physical labor. And now he's just sort of like bumming around doing, restaurant gigs, living, in a dive and, doing big gambling at night, being able to loan friends thousands of dollars on one night and then the next night having nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very curious. Like, how are you able to make all this money? Because we don't really see him win ever.
Not really.
But clearly he must be winning some nights. And
yeah,
an easy come, easy go. I think you see at a point he gives a bunch of money to a friend who needs it to pay off the gangs. The protection for his restaurant. He's not getting much protection. And, he loses and then that's the end of his money. And he and his sisters are like, oh, great. No money, nothing to worry about. Let's go. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem to be bothered at all by, losing, which I think is different. I feel like in a lot of, movies with gamblers, there's this, sort of passion. Like they get really upset if they're losing. Oh, just give me another dollar. I can get it back. He doesn't seem to give a shit.
No.
Which is refreshing.
It's refreshing. It's also a little nihilistic.
Yeah.
And I maybe, because I know that this is part of a trilogy, it's after this trilogy of films that she's making these, Mabel Chung has made these kinds of movies about characters coming to America. And I can't help but wonder if this is maybe also like a little bit of a commentary on maybe Americanized, people who come to this country and get a little Americanized. And you know what I mean? Because I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's like a capitalist thing.
Yeah.
Like capitalism is very nihilistic, I feel, in a lot of ways.
It is interesting that there isn't a lot of pressure on these characters to conform. I know that there are, there's characters that just never speak English whatsoever. And there's just like very little smatterings of English through stuff. And it's just, she finds the Jennifer finds the the one woman who is like, oh, come babysit my daughter, and they all speak Chinese to each other, all speaking Cantonese. And it's just like, wow, okay, and there's not a lot. And like her friends at college all speak English, and she seems to understand them, but I don't think she ever speaks English to them.
Vincent's girlfriend, who they meet at the station in Jersey, she does not speak Chinese.
Right,
No.
right. That's a really good point. She seems, much more like an ABC.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of interesting sort of, I don't know if parallels is the right word, but, Vincent's girlfriend, obviously English speaking, that's her native language. And you have Vincent, who seems to have assimilated a little bit more, and he's even trying to explain his infidelity to Jennifer, being like, oh, it's just like saying hi
Right.
over here. And then I'm forgetting her name, Anna's mother, who she babysits for, her boss. Her character was interesting to me because she seems like she also would have immigrated to America, and she has an American last name, Sherwood, but she's single. So it's not clear whether she's a widow or whether she's divorced. But clearly seems to be a successful, independent woman, mother. So there seems to be interesting sort of parallels between different, sort of like immigrant statuses and, how you succeed with sort of life you have.
It really feels like her daughter was dubbed to me. Like watching her mouth, I was like, I don't think she's speaking Cantonese. I can't really tell what she's speaking, but
Didn't seem like Cantonese to me.
It was just strange. Like, I don't know if it was somebody dubbing over her voice or something, but I was like, that doesn't look right to me. What's going on with this?
I think that whole, like you mentioned, Cullen, that whole kind of subplot with the woman where she's working as her housekeeper. It's interesting because and I'm not saying it doesn't amount to anything, but it's kind of, again, there's this movie, in my opinion, kind of the way I perceived it when I was done watching it for the second time it's like a slice of life movie in a lot of ways, because there is kind of the main plot throughout, but then there are these kind of smaller interactions, these like almost smaller vignette scenes throughout, which is interesting because, like we're mentioning about this kind of her being a housekeeper, that it doesn't factor into the main plot. It's more just kind of like a slice of life thing, and then at the end it's like, come live with us. Because there was a kind of this misunderstanding with this creepy old man that I think is just a young guy in gray hair powder.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which was again that kind of plot line did not go anywhere. It was just kind of seemed like a really strange choice.
I was glad that it ended the way it ended, though, because I was like, oh shit, this could again go really bad, and he could bankrupt Chow Yun-Fat's character, and I'm just like, oh fuck, this could get really bad really fast.
Yeah,
but that also seems to serve a bit of like a parallel, because you have the sort of the greasy spoon, the more like working class Chinese restaurant where they're at earlier, where it's like it's a community. Right. It looks like mainly people that are Chinese eating the food there, the menus in Chinese. And then he has this restaurant that's sort of, close to the financial district. That's, like the World Trade Center, the menus in it. It's like they're serving him a cocktail fin de siècle. So it's like in French.
Yeah.
And clearly like Chow Yun-Fat has never heard of this. So it's not a Chinese cocktail. It's $150 just for him to eat.
And the way he looks at the menu, I'm like, what language is the menu in? Because he looks at it and he just puts it down as like, okay, what do you recommend? Because I'm like, I don't think he could read that. And I'm like, it feels like he could read English. So maybe the menu is in French. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't understand because I thought that it's a restaurant called the Big Panda.
Right.
And I saw Chinese.
Yeah. I saw Chinese characters on the front of the menu, so I thought the inside would have English and Chinese.
Yeah.
And most of the clientele of the restaurant seemed to be white.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that guy, was a total scumbag because they were.
Oh yeah.
He obviously seemed to be. It's the second boyfriend of the mother that we meet in the movie.
Yeah.
And Yeah, he's already cheating on her or trying to cheat on her with Jennifer, and she obviously wants nothing to do with this scumbag who is offering her money if she, plays nice to him. And he's also creeping out the daughter. He's trying to kiss her, and she's just like, "Yeah, I don't like that. The way your beard feels against my face. Get away from me."
Yeah.
Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a grown ass adult to kiss 10-year-old.
She looks, right around that age. Ugh.
It's there's some like strange choices in this movie because it could have gone these darker routes. Right?
Yeah. Even with the little girl, I was like, is she just going to be a complete bitch to her all the time and just make Jennifer's life, awful and be like, oh, she invited this other guy over and blah, blah, blah. But she, wins her over pretty quickly, especially when she starts playing that song. And I love all of that stuff to do with like the watch and how it has the song associated with it and takes her back to home. That was very nice.
I also love how the way that Chow Yun-Fat managed to charm Anna was to like open his mouth and show all he had shelled these, seeds in his mouth and spit them out. And then she's like, oh, you got bad breath. So he gets in closer and breathes on her and she starts laughing. And it's like, okay, yeah, a little kid's going to like things that are gross. And he's yeah. I thought that was a really charming and unexpected interaction. I liked that.
Well, yeah, and I think it speaks for me the charismatic nature of Chow Yun-Fat. And we saw it last week when we talked about Seventh Curse. But again, he was used sparingly there. But I think to obviously a lot of success. And then here, he's given so much to do, and he really rises to the occasion. I mean, he's really good in this movie. And again, playing a character that we've kind of seen before, but not at the same time. There are some things about him that are kind of not what you would expect from this kind of movie. And I just, I wonder what the sense of, it feels almost like it's, the positive nature is just, it's a different sensibility. It's a different way of writing this kind of movie than we as maybe American audiences might be used to.
Yeah, I liked all these choices that they made. Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't expecting, and they took a lot of turns that I didn't think they were going to take, and I was fine with all of them.
Yeah, it's compared to last week, it's a pretty serious movie, and I don't know.
Oh God, yes.
I don't know how serious the other movies are this month, comparatively to this one, but I was pretty worried going into this movie because because these are just like, this is not the kind of movie I'm normally.
No owls.
No owls. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. If it was Chow Yun-Fat as a CGI owl flying around, then I'm all on board. Or if Chow Yun-Fat is fighting with Johnny Depp against a giant kraken,
there you go.
I'm even more on board.
Now, I haven't seen All About Ah Long. I have a feeling it might be like this. I'm not sure. But I can guarantee you next week and the final film of this month are not like An Autumn's Tale whatsoever.
What are the other ones?
Tiger on Beat and Full Contact.
I can thank you for introducing me to those movies.
I hope you enjoyed them.
Oh, they were great. I look forward to listening to these episodes and rewatching those movies.
Awesome.
All About Ah Long, it seems like an even more serious movie than this one. Just from the look of it and just from kind of the character that Chow Yun-Fat seems to. Which again, I'm looking forward to, because if it's even more dramatic and serious, again, I don't have any frame of reference for that. I have kind of now a little bit, but not. If that goes like super duper serious and it's like just a very dramatic film, then I'm excited to see what that looks like with Chow Yun-Fat in it.
I like how this one didn't get overly dramatic. Maybe the word is like, I like that it didn't get too melodramatic, because the stakes are all pretty serious. Jennifer comes to this country, finds out her boyfriend's cheating on her. She doesn't have enough money to start classes right away. She gets one job. The sleazebag boyfriend gets her a second job. Essentially within like a day, she loses one job, and as a result of that, winds up losing her second job. And then this Vincent guy keeps trying to like hound her down after he, somehow his other relationship breaks up. So all that's like pretty serious stuff, and she almost dies, but it's never played for these sorts of like I would say these like melodramatic heights. It's not cloying.
It verge on the maudlin, which
That's the word. Yes, you're correct.
It really could have. Like this, that was the one thing I'm not gonna say I wasn't looking forward to watching this, but I was like, oh Jesus, here we go. Like it's gonna be
right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, when we talk about The Killer for your Patreon episode, I mean, the thing about the heroic bloodshed films is the melodrama. I mean, it's like Douglas Sirk would look at some of those films and be like, yeah, that's a little much. I mean, it gets really out there sometimes with the melodrama, and especially with some of the stylistic conventions. You mentioned the slow-mo, and they use slow-mo in here, but they use it very sparingly. But then you get Wu, and his style lends itself to melodrama with, I'm going to give you a flashback of something that happened 5 minutes ago, and it's going to be slow motion so you can really contemplate this, and the music's going to swell. Whereas with this, like, I don't really remember the soundtrack that much because they just used it so effectively. I thought that it was handled very well. And yeah, it isn't maudlin, though it could have. That's what I was afraid that it was going to turn on a dime at some point, like a major tragedy was going to happen. And I'm so glad it doesn't. I mean, the movie doesn't really, I guess it has a happy ending, but it gets really sad at a couple points. But I was with it. I didn't feel like it was kind of throwing me away and just like, oh, well, if you don't stick with this movie now, you're lost forever.
Yeah, it felt really naturalistic to me. I'd like to see more of the director Mabel Chung's movies. I really liked the way she handled the drama, the actors. I liked, we've remarked upon it already. It can be a little serious and it'll be like a little funny, but it's not slapstick. It's not, these gags. Everything's it's a pretty subtle movie.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciated that. I appreciated that it's not my expectations being fulfilled on this kind of movie. It is a very different kind of this kind of movie.
I also love how she films New York. Like that apartment building is just amazing, and I also love that Lauren and I were both remarking like about Jennifer's apartment. We're like, that's actually a pretty good apartment.
Oh yeah.
It's like, that's pretty big. I've never lived in a place with a tub in the living room, but I've definitely seen places like that for rent. It's like, oh yeah, once you put the door on it and it can become a table, it's multifunctional.
Mm-hmm.
Once your fried rice tastes like fried cookies. Just imagine it's fried cookies. What does that even mean?
Well,
that was weird. Yeah.
Doesn't sound like she's that good of a cook yet, but
No.
She's working on it. But yeah, she's got that's a much bigger kitchen than I've had in a lot of my apartments.
And he's trying to teach her, man. He doesn't do this thing with the salt, but he does do the throw the salt from across the room with the spoon. I thought that was pretty nice.
Because if you're too close, it's going to be too salty. If you're too far away, it's not going to have any flavor.
That's right.
That's right.
I loved that scene.
That was great.
And the Foley of hearing it hit the water.
I really liked that she paints her apartment red. Like when she does up her apartment, it looks really good. And I was really glad to see like how she also kind of invades his space and cleans up his space. And I love the little cap that she makes for the clay figure of him that she has created. And yeah, there were a lot of little moments in this movie, little quiet moments that just did it for me.
This also just made me nostalgic for like Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like, it made me just, even though I'm in Brooklyn, I'm like, man, I want to walk around Manhattan and downtown in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. I want to be outside of the 42nd Street Public Library and seeing the people, selling wares. And
how nice did it look when she was sitting there before the old man gave her the flower with the sunset and the bridge and everything? I mean,
oh yeah,
just gorgeous photography and just, using New York so smartly. And that Chow Yun-Fat had painted that bridge scene for her. So her driving in Vince's little car as she's going up to Long Island, I was like, man, this is breaking my heart.
At the end, it's they missed each other it's just a misunderstanding, which is such a goddamn movie. It's such such a like, just go and talk to her, motherfucker. Come on. I love it. In these kinds of movies it works, but that's the movie right at the end. It pulls it becomes a movie at the end and pulls the movie conventions where it's like characters don't say what they need to each other.
I believe it though, because I do know what you mean, Chris.
I believe it about as much as in any of these movies, frankly. So,
but he's a hot mess though. Like, he doesn't have his shit together.
No.
He doesn't know how to... He can't even tell her it's his birthday. He can't tell her he bought her tickets to a Broadway show.
Yeah.
Like, he really has a problem communicating throughout this whole movie. I mean, neither of them communicate really well. No. So I believe that ending, and I think it's probably good for both of them that they went off, and when they meet at the end, I think it's kind of nice that it's like, all right, they both seem like in a pretty good place to meet again.
Oh, yeah. I like the ending. I'm more just talking to you see her and assume something, and it's just like, that's just...
But there's nothing she could say, at least in my opinion, that would have made that work.
Sure, right. I agree.
Like, I think it had sort of played out like they had a wonderful date, you know, drinking wine in an open air bus. You know?
That was great. Yeah, this movie, it does make me nostalgic for New York, and especially New York of that time. And I'm not one of these, maniacs who's just like, anything past 1992 sucks, but it's just like, that was a very magical era for that city, especially as it was suffering through the 80s.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, there's a feel to it that you can't replicate now.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything feels very, even when it doesn't try to feel polished, it feels kind of like, not whitewashed, but a little sanitized. And depending on the movie, a lot sanitized.
Did you all try to pick out the movies in the marquees?
Oh,
in the 42nd Street? So that's fair.
I always have to. That's my thing, right?
So Cobra, they had the poster for. The reflection, it looked like The Fly was playing. Was that Sudden Impact?
It looked like it, yeah.
I can't think of any others offhand, but I kind of want to go back and pause and figure out like what theaters those were.
Mm-hmm.
It just, honestly, as a child of the 90s, it just makes me think of those Teenage Turtle movies. They captured New York pretty well. They did. Those live action ones did. They really captured like that time and place in New York. Everybody eating fucking pizza on the street, the floppy pizza, and the guy on the motorbike.
Yankee Pancake.
Yeah.
Yes, Yankee Pancake.
Yankee Pancake, and then what's the
that
other
was
thing?
Great.
He says the other the Yankee. The thing about he makes fun of the
Yankee Opera.
Yankee Opera.
Yes, yes, that was great too.
Real good in this. He's real good in this movie. He's real good. I think Chow Yun-Fat's just good overall. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Especially somebody who's seen more Chow Yun-Fat movies.
I love when she's telling him to shave his chin.
Yeah.
So that way, he could look a little bit more like Richard Gere. And
yeah.
It's just like, you're giving Chow Yun-Fat some tips on how to look better. He looks pretty good to
balls,
me.
Lady. Yeah.
But they had a good rapport because, she's kind of fucking with him. And
yeah.
Yeah, this is this was a good pick, Mike. Definitely different than last week, but I liked it. It was good, very good.
Good. I'm glad you dug it.
Yeah, and again, it's the very much the antithesis of the kind of movie I'm used to. So, or the kind of movie that I would search out even. So, I liked it. It was good. So, I would ask you, Cullen, final thoughts on An Autumn's Tale, and skip it or watch it.
Skip whatever you're currently watching and put this on.
What about you, Mike?
Oh, definitely watch it. I don't know if this is available readily or not, but I hope it is.
How the three of us watched it, I don't think is indicative of fine. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's anywhere. What's weird is, like Bollywood films seem to be all over Amazon Prime, but like Hong Kong movies don't seem to have like a place that's easy to find them.
Yeah, they were doing some for a while, and then, but they were usually dubbed, and it was usually like they were taken off a couple of years ago. But I was watching like Wheels on Meals and some of the Jackie films on there, but the dubbed version. So I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah, as we always like to point out, not almost every Mike White March, but definitely when we do Bollywood movies, don't watch these. For the love of God, don't do it. Just don't do it.
One of the things I want to do after having seen this movie is go through some of the like Hong Kong Film Awards, because this was like nominated and won a ton of accolades. And I'm mainly used to going through a lot of the more genre fare. This kind of inspires me to like check out some more different type of stuff.
I can't believe we didn't talk about the Gift of the Magi twist to this movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's not too late.
Surprised.
Yeah, it's not too late. We're not done yet. We haven't played the preview for next week's episode.
The car's not over the horizon.
Yeah. So,
you can still run. So much running.
So much running. I love it. Yeah, that was a little like I shouldn't have been surprised. I should not have been surprised because the watches play such a part to it. I mean, from the very beginning when she's on the airplane and checking the watch and checking the time, and then his whole thing. I mean, talk about what do you always say, Chris, hanging a lantern on it? I mean, that he actually has the lighter in his watch, But yeah, I loved that we get that little, he bought the watch band and she gives him the watch. So I was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was a cute little bit, and he gives the guy the car for the watch. He gives that guy his entire car.
That piece of shit car. I mean, which is the worst car, that one or the first one that he's driving?
First one by far.
The first one was bad. The first one was real bad.
I guess the second one had workable doors.
Yeah.
Though I don't believe that it's a real convertible. I think when it rains, the top stays down.
Oh, yeah.
So what about you, Mike? What's your final thoughts on An Autumn's Tale and Skip It or Watch It?
Oh, I loved it. I'm so glad that we just kind of lucked into this one this month. I could have picked anything else. Yeah. So I'm very, very happy. And I really like your suggestion, Cullen, of going through the Hong Kong Film Awards, because I'm looking at some titles right now and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen some of these movies and there are some that I haven't that I should probably check out. So, I mean, to be number one, I remember being really good. Days of Being Wild, Rouge, Autumn's Tale, Better Tomorrow, of course, Police Story, and then there's a ton that I haven't seen. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I know I've been wanting to see Fruit Chan's Made in Hong Kong forever. That won the 98 awards. So yeah, this is going to be a good list to check out things and see some stuff that I've never really run across before.
Project.
Actually, that one's on Netflix.
Chow Yun-Fat.
Pretty sure that's on Netflix right now.
Any good?
I haven't watched it yet. So
I mean, it's got Chow Yun-Fat in it, so it was technically up for debate this month, but it did not make.
No, yeah,
it did win best film of the year in 2019.
Yeah.
So there you go. As for me, I enjoyed it. This was a good movie. It was definitely, again, not the kind of movie I would normally seek out, but Chow Yun-Fat's performance was really good, and he was really good. But at this point, it's not surprising after last week where he was good and he was barely in the movie all the time, and he's really, really good. So my hope is for next week it's kind of the same. And you have or haven't seen next week's episode or movie?
Oh, I definitely have.
Have you heard next week's episode, Mike? Have you heard it yet?
I haven't heard it yet. I don't think I've recorded it yet, but maybe.
But you haven't seen the movie yet.
Oh, I have seen that one. Yes, it's been a long time, but actually, I take that back. We per Cullen, I showed it during the pandemic when I was doing Friday night screenings.
Oh, okay. So on that note, let's take a break and we'll play a preview for next week's episode.
快啲掉條褲落嚟！掉！我掉你老母啊！掉！放咗佢兩個！放咗佢兩個！快啲除！阿豆，除啦！等下！死仔梗係有心整蠱我噶啦你！唔係啊，沙展，大風啊！大風！我今日揾地風睇下都冇啊！快啲啊！除啊！吊頸要唞下氣噶嘛！你叫我以後點樣見廣大嘅市民呢？你死仔又整我喎！啊！
係咯，咁兩兄弟以後咪拍硬檔咯。你知唔知阿叔當年啊，點樣由散仔紮到做總督察啊？
督人背脊拆人鞋啊！督察，你哋又督緊邊個？Nobody sir，大胸圍啊！
你大胸圍離譜啲啩？
哦，唔係，我同老婆買啊。
咩 size 啊？幾大啊？陳奕先
冇咁大。
鄭裕玲
佢是大是細㗎。
梅艷芳
佢邊度有啫？
咁有冇我咁犀利啊？
你又誇張個頭啦你！
色狼啊！
邊個啊？喺度啊！
色狼啊！
喂，你唔好再喐啦！如果唔係叉住多你呢條罪，襲警啊！喂，沙展啊！唔好太過火啦！你死開啲啊！唔好喐啦，八婆！風村啊！
冇啊！我唔知係邊個，我冇啊！
喂，作死啊！佢身痕啊，大過龍佢想喐啊！
我要你應承我一件事。
好，你講。
以後笑都去滾啊！
好，我慳啲使嘅啦。醫生吩咐叫我食得冇嘥啊！
俾護士長見到啊，實鬧死我
咁
啦！
應承我今晚睇戲先啦。
你真係
我好耐都冇靚女陪我睇過戲啦，陰公嚟啦！
醫生俾你出院㗎啦！
唉，醫生話我缺乏母愛，心理生理都需要治療啊！
唔噏啦，快啲上床啊！
上床一齊上啦，扮咩就已經嚟咪嚟啦！嗱，喺邊度？
大哥。
啊，咪咪。
殺到嚟啦！
我妹嚟嘅，佢教我溝女嘅。
你個衰仔啊！
過嚟！喂，冇嘢！
So in the next episode, we're going to be talking about Tiger on Beat with Chow Yun-Fat about it once again. That's exciting. I like not knowing. I mean, what fun is it to know?
Yeah.
My expectations can't be let down if I don't know what the movie's about. So, but yeah, it's got Chow Yun-Fat in it. So come on back for that episode. Mike's going to be here, and we're going to be joined by our good friend, the one and only, our friend in Las Vegas, the one and only Father Malone.
Ooh.
Traveling.
This will be a great episode.
Well, anytime you get the three of us in a room, it's going to be entertaining. That's for certain.
Much like our podcast, Dreams for Sale, a Twilight Zone 1985 podcast.
Take this opportunity to plug it because nobody else is.
Nobody else is listening to that show.
Yeah, right? People aren't even listening to it, let alone talking about it. Until then, Cullen, where could people find you if they were looking?
Where? Why have all my URLs just jumped out of my brain?
Pulp-Serenade.com.
Yeah, that's the one we'll go with. I think I do. Yes, as Mike said, pulp-serenade.com. And there is a new post that has been referenced. Maybe that was before we hit record. It was
during the recording.
Well, yes. Then you'll remember it's about getting a storage space and moving books. The next post I need to write about how I decide what I kept in the apartment and what I didn't.
What if you just moved into the storage space?
I don't want to do that, but I have thought about getting like a nice easy chair, get some like shelves to keep the boxes in there.
Just close the door, put a light on. I mean, I don't think anybody would bother you. Just don't fall asleep.
No, I don't want to do that.
Cullen gets found 100 years later, mummified, with a book in his hand. Where the fuck did Cullen go?
I didn't realize this. Talk about other interesting like Hong Kong artifacts. So there's a series called The New Hong Kong Cinema, and I've got a couple volumes. I didn't realize that there's a volume on Anautumn'stale out there. So I might have to pick that up. It's by Stacey Lee Ford. Huh. Yeah. You learn something every day.
Every day. As long as you keep reading, you learn something new. What about you, Mike? Where can people find you, the man who programmed this month?
You can always find me over at the Projection Booth Podcast, which is available at projectionboothpodcast.com. And pretty soon we'll be dropping our third episode of The Shabby Detective, which is yet another Columbo podcast.
Yeah, and surprisingly, the 3 people who are involved in that show are here right now.
Holy cow.
Wow. Because Cullen, ladies and gentlemen, does the music for the show.
The end theme, all by Cullen.
All by Mr. Gallagher.
Again, thank you all very much for the opportunity. I am thrilled. I am now, first time I can now say I'm a podcast composer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too many people can say that.
No.
I would like to say that more. So if anybody listening wants some podcast music, I have to give you a little discount from what I charged these 2 fellas. But
yeah, it was pretty pricey.
Yeah.
I mean, I already got my condo, so
we had to mortgage a lot to make sure we covered your pretty exorbitant, as they would say. Yeah, as for me, you can find me at cstachiw.com, cstachiw.com. That is my link tree. And yes, my last name is Ukrainian. And no, I don't want to talk about it. So, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. So don't at me asking questions because I won't answer them. And I don't think
you might feel a lot better if you talk about it. Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, what did I talk? Let's not. You know what they say? It's I don't have to talk about it. I'll just let the news do the talking for me because I'm not over there, but somebody else is. Yeah, that's where you can find my stuff. And yeah, culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast, all places you can go to find this show. Cullen, thank you for joining us as always. Mike, another great pick as always. But again, you always do such a good job with Mike White March. The bar is set so high for everybody else. Everybody else is always so worried they're not going to do a good job. It's because Mike White does such a good job every time.
Striking fear in our hearts.
Always. And yeah, make sure to check out the next episode.